What is natural language processing? When you use voice recognition on a smartphone, a spam filter in your email, a search engine, or a chatbot, all of these are everyday applications of natural language processing which make our lives more convenient. Natural language processing, or NLP, is everything to do with giving computers the ability to understand human language, kind of like training a computer to think like a human brain. NLP is a branch of AI, but it's really a mixture of disciplines such as linguistics, computer science, and engineering. But why might we need NLP at work, and how can a company save money with NLP? If you have a company with records of customer transactions in Excel or an SQL database, it's relatively straightforward to calculate the total spend, or the average spend, or the total spend by region. Computers are very good at calculating faster than we can, for example, crunching numbers to find the mean customer spend. But the spreadsheet of clean numbers is an ideal scenario. Your company may have data in formats that aren't suitable for a database or Excel spreadsheet, such as PDF documents, scanned documents, images, video, or audio data. In some industries such as insurance, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, construction, or in regulatory bodies, the core data of an organization is likely to be unstructured text data. And although computers can crunch numbers faster than humans, they aren't as good as humans at handling text documents. When might I need NLP at work or in business? Let's imagine that you work for a regulatory agency in charge of housing standards in your country. When a homeowner buys a new build home, he or she registers it with your organization. And when things go wrong, let's say the homeowner finds an electrical fault, damp, or damaged plasterboard or drywall, there is a process where the homeowner sends in a form or a letter, which may be handwritten or digital, detailing the problems with the construction in plain text. When you read a single form, it's easy to understand what is being communicated. The problem comes when your company receives large amounts of correspondence in the form of free text documents. Ideally, the company would hire an intelligent person with industry knowledge and task that person with reading every document as it comes in. But that's slow, expensive, and not always possible. Imagine you want to find the commonest construction faults, or identify the homeowner's submissions which are likely to escalate to an inspection, which is expensive, or an insurance claim being made. The forms are all in PDF files on the organization's shared drive. How could you analyze them in Excel? Where would you even start? You might be tempted to read through a sample of the documents and summarize them qualitatively for your boss. Of course, this is not a bad idea, and it will give you some degree of insight. Unfortunately, we don't yet have a tool as simple as Excel for analyzing unstructured text data, but NLP can help. First of all, you would need to convert the data from PDF or Word format into plain text. Then you can explore the data. How many documents do you have? How many languages are there? A Python library can quickly tell you if there are non-English texts. If you have relatively little insight into the contents of the documents, you can run an analysis called topic detection, which could let you find common themes. If your boss is interested in trends, you could run a trend analysis, where you find topics which become more prominent at particular times or locations. Perhaps heating system breakdowns are more likely to be reported in autumn, for example. All of these applications can help a business because they take away the human task of reading through vast amounts of data. Where NLP brings real value to a business is often in predictive analytics. If your organization has been operating for many years, it can be informative to consider what it would have been helpful to know in the past. Going back to our housing example, if we take a snapshot of what we knew this time 2 years ago, the correspondence received from the homeowners, what we know now, did the issue escalate? Was it resolved? How long did it take to resolve? And how much did it cost? We can start to look for patterns. You can then use this data to train a predictive model, which receives a text document and predicts the cost of the repair. Kind of like if you had rainfall data and flooding data and wanted to use Excel to predict one from the other. Except, our independent variable in this case is a document written in natural language. Let's imagine how we can do this with a really simple example. I've got a set of documents with sentences such as, I have a crack in my drywall, my house is flooded with water, or water is coming in through the ceiling. I know that the first two did not escalate, but water is coming through the ceiling did escalate. So I have both what we knew when a report was made, the text on the left, and what happened afterwards. If you're a statistician, you can think of the text on the left as the independent variable of what we already know, and the escalation or non-escalation as the dependent variable, what we would want to predict. Now clearly you can't just paste this into a spreadsheet and make a regression line. As we know, computers think in noughts and ones, So we have to turn our documents into numbers. How we do this is by passing it through a series of steps called an NLP pipeline. The first step is called tokenization. We split each sentence into individual words or tokens. Next, we convert the words in each sentence into root forms, throwing away suffixes like ing or ed. This is called lemmatization. We can remove words like and the, since they contain little content. These words are called stop words. And finally, we can turn our set of documents into numbers by assigning each word a point in a vector. You can pass your numbers into a regression model. For example, we can see clearly that a document with the word water is likely to be high risk. Of course, in real life, we'd have to be a bit cleverer. For example, words mean different things in different contexts, and not all homeowners would necessarily use the word water in their document. The current state of the art is a large language model. LLMs still convert text ultimately into vectors, but can take into account the entire context of the sentence. So, to summarize, an easy natural language processing model to build is a simple classifier or naive Bayes classifier, which would be able to triage incoming documents into categories. It takes a little more skill and business understanding to build a risk model which can make predictions based on documents, but this can deliver a huge value to the business. For example, your boss can now project how much is likely to be spent on repairs in the next 3 months. What are some other applications of NLP in business? In the pharmaceutical industry, when an investigator is running a clinical trial and applies for funding, they will write a protocol detailing how the trial is to be run. The investigator submits a protocol to a funding organization who will decide whether or not to go ahead with funding the trial. Trial protocols are typically PDFs and around 200 pages long, and they're written in highly technical English. This is what they look like. Imagine your department is tasked with predicting the cost or the risk of running a trial based on the protocol. The same principle can be applied as for the housing defects problem. You can gather data on protocols which were submitted in the past and follow them forward in time to find out whether they succeeded or failed and how much they ended up costing. You can use this to train a predictive model to predict the most likely outcome given a protocol document. In practice, we often use a hybrid AI system for this kind of problem. That is, we define what features correspond to a risky clinical trial or an expensive clinical trial, and then we train a natural language processing model to pick them out of the text. Another example of NLP in the pharmaceutical industry is for identifying trends and patterns in interview transcripts. Market research in pharma often involves many interviews with key opinion leaders. That is, doctors who give their opinion about which drug they would use in combination with which other drug. The speech recognition model can process audio recordings, and then a text model can rapidly ingest thousands of interview transcripts and find recurring patterns, such as a large number of doctors associating a combination of drugs with a side effect. Law firms are also using NLP. For example, an AI model can be given 2 versions of a contract and asked to identify which clauses imply greater risk for a company. Lots of startups are now experimenting with retrieval augmented generation, also known as RAG, to generate legal question answering systems that combine the strength of an LLM with a database of law. Here's an example of a question answering system which combines GPT-4 with a database of English and Welsh insolvency law. Shipping insurance companies can use NLP to identify what features of paperwork indicate a risk of a ship being impounded or fined by port authorities. There's also a new approach which is becoming more popular called prompt engineering. You can pass a text document with an appropriate instruction to an LLM or large language model such as GPT, Google Gemini or similar, and you can leverage the natural language understanding and reasoning capabilities of that model. For example, I can ask an LLM which professional is needed to fix the following problem, or the homeowner's guarantee covers damp, electrical faults and major structural defects. Is the following problem covered by guarantee? Answer in HTML table format or JSON table format. The approach is becoming very popular but should be used with caution. The LLMs are trained on a vast corpus of text from the internet which does not guarantee accuracy. To mitigate this, I would provide all relevant information in the prompt and use the LLM only for understanding the question. For example, LLMs won't necessarily have up-to-date or accurate knowledge of laws in your region, so if you want to use one for legal advice, you will need to retrieve the relevant legislation using another system such as RAG. You should be careful sending data to any third-party large language model service and check that you're complying with client obligations and data protection legislation. I would advise against sending text data to a third-party service which you would not have permission to post on the internet. The end result of an effective natural language processing project is a measurable cost saving or risk reduction for a company. Lower impact NLP initiatives generally save staffing costs, for example by triaging incoming customer support inquiries. However, the NLP projects that deliver the most impact for an organization are those which are conducted as part of a wider consulting engagement, such as the development of a predictive risk model which allows the C-level in the company to turn unstructured text documents into a quantifiable risk or cost estimate for the next quarter. When implemented as part of a larger strategic and business-aware initiative, NLP can deliver a phenomenal return on investment, and a company in a traditionally conservative industry can gain a competitive advantage. Fast Data Science can assess any potential NLP projects in your organization and categorize them in terms of their stakeholder impact and technical difficulty. We can then follow through with an implementation that will benefit you. Visit fastdatascience.com to find out how natural language processing can help your business.